Absolutely fantastic to be here today. Tracy said, Troy, can you come and tell us a bit about networking? Who knows what networking is?
Everybody, hands up!
You don't want to put your hand up because you think you're going to be asked a question, I know.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone starts with
No questions around networking. But when I stopped and thought about networking, and I thought, well, actually, networking is so ingrained in everything we do. How do you isolate networking? How do I come and deliver value to you around networking when surely we all are good at networking? If networking is talking to people, we all talk to people. How from a business context and perhaps a career planning context that many of you might be considering, how do you get the most value out of networking? So, as Tracy said, I have a science background. So I stopped and thought, can I apply some type of scientific framework to networking? And in particular, can I apply a scientific framework to networking that is relevant to university students? So I thought long and hard about it, and I read an article from a guy, Syed, who wrote in 2007 that related to marketing strategy around networking, and he was looking at what are the core drivers of human behaviour. What are the things that you and I do without even thinking about it that can explain our purchasing behaviour, was primarily the focus. And I thought, well, actually, what are the core drivers of human behaviour that can influence us across many different facets, and how do they apply to networking? Because networking is something that we just do. So I thought, first thing around networking is reproduction. When you think about it, probably looking around the room, many of the ages that you're at, you may be single. So you may be thinking, how do I look more attractive to the other sex or to find a mate or a partner in life? Does anybody ever think about that? No. Oh, nobody here? Oh, maybe I've got the wrong audience. The reproductive drivers and fitness signalling is ingrained in what we do. It's the very reason why, believe it or not, why we make sure we look good in the morning before we go out. For guys, it's the reason why we want to be good at sport often. A lot of these drivers are core drivers, and without even thinking about it, hey, I'm trying to do this in order to reproduce, these things are core drivers behind us. So reproductive drivers, fitness signalling are ingrained in what we do. Just a caveat, we're talking about networking here. Some of you may, networking, particularly if I recall my university days when I studied my undergrad, this was largely the focus of a lot of my networking. If we look at what is another core driver, and that's about simply survival. And survival is dictated on a number of different things. If you think about evolution and how we've got to be a successful species that we are, we understand about fight and flight. We understand if we get into a difficult situation, we're faced with two alternatives. And that's why I'm a bike rider and a good runner. I'm very lousy at combat. But in a networking situation, probably the food-related behaviours are pretty important around networking. We've heard about two fundraising events, I think, that are occurring, and both of those involve food. When you're a university student, or certainly when I was a university student, a lot of my survival behaviour was based around what I'm going to eat tonight. And the $5 all-you-can-eat at Pizza Hut used to be a great place, and there was a whole host of different places that focused on food. Most networking functions that you go to, surprisingly enough, will have food. That shouldn't be a core reason to go to a networking function, though. Another key aspect of our survival is around kinship and tribal behaviours. We've got a small tribe that's formed here from the tourism and events marketing group. It's often safer in a pack. And so often you'll find that one of your core drivers, whether you do it consciously or subconsciously, is to form groups. And you'll find that will occur quite naturally in life, and you may or may not be able to explain why. But it's simply a core driver of human behaviour. At the end of the day, it's far easier if there's a lion attacking to be in amongst a large number of groups than be on your own. So from a networking perspective, you'll find there's lots of opportunities for you to get together. And if your core driver is simply to be together, you may not be maximising the opportunity that's ahead of you. If you look at the last of the core drivers up there, which is reciprocation. And reciprocation is one that is very, very important for an organisation like Cancer Council, but I'd say it's incredibly important for any organisation that you're involved with. Because reciprocation is the one thing that sits under a lot of the stuff that we do. If somebody does something nice for you, what do you want to do? Do something nice back to them. If you do something good for somebody else, what do you actually expect? That they're going to do something nice back to you. Now, that might be in the form of a thank you. It may be in the form of, if you think about this from a survival perspective, if you're out in the wild and you've just managed to kill yourself a large animal and you share it with your neighbour, you do that probably partly because you're being nice, but there'll be an underlying driver that says, I'm actually doing that because next time they kill an animal, I want some of that. And reciprocation is so ingrained in what we do. And there's one thing that I want you to take out today that I've got a lot out of in my experience. It's this notion that reciprocation should be a core driver in any kind of networking activities that you do. Because it's been certainly a core driver for me. If you're thinking networking is reproducing, eating food, or hanging out with your mates, it's probably not where you're going to get the best value from networking, certainly in a business context. So let me tell you about Gokul. Gokul is a lovely bloke. He moved over here from India, and one of the first things that he did when he arrived in Australia, or certainly one of the first things he did when he started to get income, was he bought himself a motorbike. Why would you buy a motorbike? Not that there's anything wrong with motorbikes. Gokul bought himself a motorbike because he's single. Strange. Except that when you think, for Gokul, buying a motorbike and having this motorbike was a sign of success. Which means if you're trying to find a partner in life, it's better to look successful. So one of the first things that I saw of Gokul, or the first time I knew about he had a motorbike, there was a photograph of him on Facebook with his motorbike. And this is a very standard behaviour for all of us in that we want to look good. Gokul also grew up in a tough part of India, and part of what he did was he learned a martial art. So he's become very proficient at martial arts. He tells some wonderful stories about how his martial arts helped him. Tells some wonderful stories about how his martial arts didn't help him. But he's very clear on the fight or flight response. He's ready to hang around. I'm ready to run. He's ready to hang around. He knows why he's here. When you look at Gokul's friends, when he first moved to Australia, this is just a snapshot of Facebook from the moment, but when he first moved to Australia, most of his friends were from India. And when he arrived in Australia, he hung around with people who came from the same area. Why? Because it's an innate kind of tribal thing. We want to stick with people we know, shared understanding, shared experience, and so we relate in our groups. And that's, again, these are all very normal, very standard things to do. But Gokul then did something different. Because he could have stayed within his groups, and you'll see some names up on this, on his list of friends who aren't necessarily from India, and their faces would give away that they're not from India. Gokul started volunteering. He needed a job. And Gokul recognised, because he's a pretty smart chap, well, he's very smart in fact, he recognised that he wasn't going to get a job. He had HR qualifications in India, he had a computer science background in India, his family owned a farm in India, it was all good for him in India. He came to Australia, he had no job, his qualifications were worth nothing. But he recognised the value of networking, and he recognised, whether he did consciously or not, this value of reciprocation. So Gokul came and he volunteered for Cancer Council. He started there, came in, we started to find little jobs for Gokul to do, and work. And pretty quickly, Gokul added great value. He went over the top of what he had to do. He provided value in different areas, and he talked about what he'd done. He came and said to me, Troy, look, you know, I studied HR back in India, and I'm not going to have qualifications that are recognised here, and also did computer science. So we started thinking, great, computer science, HR qualifications, we look after lots of volunteers, we interact with lots of people, and we've got a computer system that we're having trouble with. Gokul, go, sort it out. So Gokul starts to fix our problems, all volunteering, and then eventually we need some people to work more consistently than a volunteer. So instead of putting out to market an ad, we ask Gokul whether he'll apply. We advertise internally, and Gokul applies, and he gets the job. A year before that, we put an ad in the paper for an administration guru. That was actually the heading. I was quite proud of that one. And we had over 60 responses. Gokul got the job. One response. He even didn't need to update his resume because we already saw what he was capable of doing. He'd already added great value to us. As an organisation, we reciprocated. So Gokul got the job. He got the job as a casual administration manager. And then he kept adding value. He kept doing more than what his position description identified. And he kept solving problems from somebody who would be paid a lot more to solve those problems. And then, of course, the next job comes up. Full-time administration officer. And it's advertised internally, and one person applies. Doesn't give a resume. Just has an interview, more of a chat, really. And then Gokul's full-time employed with Cancer Council. So when you think about how you get jobs and what is the value of networking, this is a snapshot of my career. Most of the jobs that I've done. There's a few different ones there. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's no real theme. I had a lot of fun. I ran my own business, Australian souvenir photography. I had contracts with the Women's National Basketball League, with the Netball Association. There's probably a theme occurring there, Women's National Basketball, Netball Association. The rest of those jobs came about because I took the time to network. I took the time to ring people up cold and say, hey, can we meet for a coffee? Can we have a chat? Can I come and learn a bit more about your organisation? Or just through people that I've met day to day, asking them and telling them about what I stand for, what I do, how I do it, and being a nice bloke. Because people want to help people who are nice and friendly and helpful. And all the time, if you have a culture and a feeling within yourself of give to others, not take from others, but give to others, then people will reciprocate. And that list is a list of the value of reciprocation. If you're sitting in the audience thinking, how can I get a job? I want a job. Then you might be looking at it from a different frame. You might need to start looking at it from, how can I add value? And once you start adding value, then employers will notice you. Because every time we advertise a job at Cancer Council, and Matt's just been through this, you get 70 or 80 applicants, and all you are is a piece of paper. And it doesn't matter how large font you use. It doesn't matter whether you underscore your name, whether you put your name on each page, whether you put a fancy graphic on there that you got from clip art or you downloaded off the internet. You're just a piece of paper, and so you need to work out how to get out of that piece of paper mentality and get into evaluating mentality and develop the relationship before you even need to apply for the job. Because I've only updated my resume a couple of times in my life, and they're typically for the ones in blue. And the rest of those, it's simply picking up the phone, saying, hey, this is what I've got to offer, can we come and have a chat? Maybe I can volunteer, maybe I can help you with something. No charge, just happy to chat. And that's a place where very few people play. The reason why I highlighted Gokul is it doesn't happen very often. Matt, sitting here, Matt's an interesting one. Come stand up over here, Matt. No. Matt rang me up out of the blue. He'd done some fundraising for us. And because Matt's had an experience with cancer, he lost his mother to cancer, I hope you won't mind me saying. And so Matt was volunteering with us. And he saw an ad in the paper for Vodafone, who were delivering a program in order to give back to the community. So Vodafone were willing to fund a person up to $50,000 for them working with a charity. So Matt rings me up and says, hey, it's Matt. I want to work for you, and I'm going to try and get someone else to pay for it. So Matt and I have a coffee down in Gooja Street, Chibo, and pretty quickly in the conversation with Matt, I learned that Matt's got some incredible values and some incredible belief around what he does, and I think, yeah, I actually need Matt. I didn't need Matt because I had a job that was specific around what I needed Matt for. I didn't have a project officer, Matt Saar. I had some people in there. I had a culture that needed somebody who was going to be strong in their belief, and Matt was strong in his belief. I needed someone who could connect with the community in a way that, was going to be a bit uncomfortable, a bit chaotic, not planned, and Matt pretty quickly, in one cup of coffee, I don't think you even had coffee, did you? I think it might have been tea, was able to convey that he could solve that problem for me. No position description. In fact, when Matt joined, we got him to write his own position description. And so he's developed the Ambassador project, of which Tracy is one of our ambassadors, and that all came off the back of having a need for somebody who could do something. No position description, and if we'd have put an ad in the paper, firstly, the HR department wouldn't have allowed me to write the ad because it wouldn't have had any detail in it, and I wouldn't have been able to write a position description because I had no idea what it was. But I needed somebody who stood for something to come into the organisation to do a job that I couldn't define. And that's when networking becomes really powerful, and I'll explain to you a bit more why. Who's heard of the Tour de France? Just make sure you're all awake, hopefully all of you. And the Tour Down Under, who's heard of the Tour Down Under? Yeah, great, yeah, events, right into that. Tour Down Under obviously occurs here. Now, Cancer Council is the charity partner of the Tour Down Under, which means we have an opportunity to make the most of an opportunity. When we started with the Tour Down Under in 2009, we signed a contract, or the formal relationship with Tour Down Under in November 2008, and then it's like, okay, go. Do something. There's no structure to that at all. And we spent our time trying to develop a way of making money and developing relationships out of Tour Down Under. And the good thing about Tour Down Under is you have some great brands involved in it. And we, through simply rocking up at cocktail functions and speaking quietly to people, were able to uncover the opportunities. Skoda here, international brand. The head of Skoda Australia is a guy by the name of Matt Wisner. Matt Wisner happens to be a South Australian guy. His parents happen to live in the same street that I live in. None of which we knew until the second year when I saw all of his Skoda cars parked in the street and thought, what's all that about? What happens in these relationships is that we have no contracts. You know, often we think, right, let's get a contract. If you had to, has anybody had to apply for sponsorship for anything from any organisations? There's a few hands going up. The hardest thing about writing a letter of sponsorship is the same thing about writing a job application letter, is it goes onto a pile. And you have to try and convey on paper your passion, your commitment, what you stand for as an organisation, and the person on the other end has to get trust out of a piece of paper. I don't know how many letters of sponsorship we sent out to other tour partners, but not one of them worked. And I wrote some great stuff, you know, I was brilliant. The language, it doesn't matter how good your language is. It doesn't matter what your headline is, whether you use bold, whether you underscore, whether you have italics to convey movement and excitement. You're just a piece of paper. And the only way you're going to get through that is through networking. And so the relationships we have with these fantastic brands here in Australia and nationally and internationally is through the relationships we have. I've had lunch with the marketing director of UniSA, Alan Bridson, and Yvonne Clark in terms of communication. I've had dinner with the governor, it's a name dropping there, with the governor and Peter Hoy. I've been bike riding with Peter Hoy, who was the Vice-Chancellor here up until just recently.
Still is.
Oh, he still is. Excellent. 3 more weeks to go. All of this stuff happens not out of contracts, not out of pieces of paper, but out of relationships. And every one of these is about having a good relationship with somebody and about delivering value. Because I can tell you that not one contract is of any value at all without good relationships. Because we've got relationships with people, we've had relationships with people that are contractually based, and they are the worst relationships we've ever had. They are painful. Because a relationship in a contract setting is like this. You said you'd do that. No, I said I'd do this. No, you said you'd do that. No, I said I'd do this. Now, the value of networking is, hey, why don't we do this for you? Sure, and we'll do that. And that's what happens when you have a relationship with somebody as opposed to a contractual relationship. And I can't understate how important that is. Does anybody recognise this guy over here? Yeah, Tony Abbott. This was Tony Abbott sharing with everybody. By Tony Abbott, you know, he gets to ride with me. He was so excited. Oh, it's a shame I've got a stripe down my face. That's my better side as well. Tony Abbott is brilliant about networking. I've actually seen Tony Abbott at work. I've seen Tony Abbott who remembers everybody's name and recounts them back. I've been for a bike ride with Tony Abbott before, and politicians are some of the best networkers. And they spend their time remembering people's names. They have advisors to tell them when to smile, who to smile to, and how to make relationships work. Politicians are great at networking. Why? They want you to vote for them, exactly. So, you know, they've got to be all the time trying to work out how to deliver value to you so that you will reciprocate and deliver value to them. How are we going for time, by the way? We're good? Excellent. One of the interests, but who's got a Facebook account? Okay, keep your hands up. It's just a bit of exercise now. Keep your hands up if you have over 10 friends. Okay, that's making me look a bit silly. Hands up who's got more than 100 friends. 200 friends. 500 friends? 1,000 friends? Fantastic, we've still got a hand up. How many people think their Facebook friends are their network? Hands up. What about LinkedIn? How many people are on LinkedIn here? Oh, that's a bit sad because LinkedIn is quite useful for you, and I'll explain why. I can tell you that your Facebook friends and the number of Facebook friends you have bears no relevance whatsoever to their value. It simply is a way of collecting people's names. So if you asked your Facebook friends for $5, how many of them would give you $5? Maybe 10.
5 or 10.
If you've got 10 friends on Facebook and they all give you $5, that would be brilliant. The problem with Facebook is it can lure us into a sense that we know people. We have this amazing network. Look, I've got 100 friends on Facebook. It's actually of no use unless those people can deliver value to you and you can deliver value to them. Now, if you've got 100 friends on Facebook and every time you're putting a post on Facebook that adds value to them, and I can assure you that value is not just woke up in the morning, that as a post on Facebook is not value. I hate to break it to some of you, but that is just rubbish. If you want your Facebook friends to be of value to you, as part of a value network, then you need to add value to them. And there are great ways of adding value through Facebook. You may want to share content on Facebook that you find is going to be relevant and is going to help people. That's adding value, not telling people that you've just had a cup of coffee and it was great. Unless, of course, it's the best coffee you've ever had in the world and it was life-changing for you, and everybody should have that cup of coffee because your world is going to change after it. It happens to me quite often, but I don't post for it. It happens usually at 10:15 every morning. So be conscious that these are not your networks. LinkedIn is likely to be the most valuable tool that you will have in a business context that's online. The reason I say that is because if you think about what you need to do as an individual is you need to stand for something. No one's going to employ you because you have a piece of paper. It's actually what you stand for. And Matt's a great example. You know, Matt didn't bring a resume when we met for coffee. He talked. He talked about the type of person that he was and what he wanted to do and how he felt he could add value. And so he was recruited without a resume. I think we asked for a resume afterwards just to convince the HR department that he was real. So stand for something. LinkedIn enables you to be able to use a way of conveying your resume. Now, whether that's of value or not to your network, somebody can find out the value online of what you can deliver to them. And you can also look online through LinkedIn connections and find out if you need some help in a particular area, you can use LinkedIn to try and identify the value that an individual brings. Because how many people love bragging about themselves? Hands up. Oh, Tracy, come on. Most people don't. Most people find it really uncomfortable to sit down in a conversation with another person and say, oh, hi, look, just wanted to tell you I'm brilliant. I'm really good at this. I'm the best marketing person you've ever seen, and have I got value for you? They're not like that. So LinkedIn provides you an opportunity to have your resume, to tell people about what you stand for. So out of all of the social networking tools, to be able to identify somebody who can help you and somebody who you can potentially connect with and help, LinkedIn is useful there. But again, your Facebook friends are not your network unless you're adding value to them and unless they would reciprocate and add value to you. This one is important. You need to be memorable. And you don't need to be memorable by changing the colour of your hair. You don't need to be memorable by doing something crazy and zany when you network with people and when you interact with groups of people. You simply need to be memorable. One of the best ways to be memorable is to carry a business card with you. So that after that conversation that you have with somebody, they remember who you are. How many of you have business cards? Good. Well, there's a few people here. I would suggest that you all should have business cards or some way of when you have a relationship with somebody, a chance meeting perhaps, or if you're going out to a function representing an organisation or a company or a careers event representing yourself, then you need a way for people to remember who you are. And the more you put on your card, I mean, this doesn't say a lot about me apart from my title and that I work for an organisation called Cancer Council. But if you don't work for an organisation called Cancer Council and you don't have a job title, then you might need to put a little bit more on your card. So think about cards. I've had lots of business cards when I worked for myself, and every time I started my own business, Australian Souvenir Photography, even when I was at university, I had a way to be able to communicate with people that they could remember. Another key way in terms of remembering people is, or having people remember you, is to send them an email the next day, or to connect with them on LinkedIn, which is a fantastically easy way to connect with somebody who you just met and for them to have a look at all the things that you're capable of doing. Connecting with them on Facebook will just be able to tell them what you had for breakfast maybe, which is not great value. So use your LinkedIn profiles, update them, and make sure that when you connect with people, give them something to remember you by, and try to hook up with them on LinkedIn. The other thing about being memorable is the flip side to being memorable, which is don't be somebody who somebody wants to forget. And there's been plenty of times when people rock up late to first meetings who, my wife's one of these people who wants to be fashionably late to everything because it's fashionable. It's not very fashionable to rock up late to business-related networking opportunities. It actually shows a disrespect of the other person. So always look to be there on time, learn what you can about that individual before you go there or that organisation, so that when you hit the ground, you can hit the ground and say, hey, we did this with you guys last year and I just wanted to say thanks. Last week, out of the blue, I called the head of Bupa here in South Australia, a guy by the name of Daniel Gallagher. And I had caught up with him for a coffee at Funk. I, first of all, had seen him once before at a function just over the table and thought, how am I going to remember this guy? When you do that, you meet somebody and then a week later or 2 weeks later or 3 weeks, and it was 2 months, as the case was, I thought, what does he look like? So I went onto LinkedIn, looked at his profile on LinkedIn, learned a little bit about him on LinkedIn. I wore a daffodil on my jacket so that he would recognise me, so that when you have that first meeting, it's a bit more comfortable. And straight from the get-go, I asked him about networking because I had this talk coming up and I thought, I've got this talk coming up next week, tell me what you know about networking. And I can tell you that his stories are very similar to mine in terms of how to get a job. He'd just got that job because he had a relationship. He'd been to the footy with Philip Morton, who runs Morton Phillips employment agency, and Philip Morton gave him a call and said, here's a job, you might want to think about applying for this one. And so he went through the back door that way. But if Philip Morton hadn't remembered him, if he hadn't added value, been a nice person, been courteous, respectful, then he probably wouldn't have got that call. So you can never underestimate the power of the moment that you spend with somebody face to face or in a group, and especially the moment after that, when you connect with them and you make sure that they remember you. So, out of all the things in my life, there are those kind of 3 things that are important. First one being add value. And I cannot underestimate the benefit that you will get if you give primarily without a reason. If you give in order that hopefully that person may reciprocate, then that's great. I believe you just give, and human nature will take hold, and people will want to give back. If you're giving only to receive, that's, in my mind, that's not real giving. That's called manipulating. So add value wherever you can, be the best person you can be, and good things will come to you, because that's human nature. Sometimes it won't. But the law of averages, science, will tell you that by being good to other people, you will get goodness back. Maybe not directly, but you will get it. It's important to work out what you stand for. Who are you? What do you do? When you're in front of somebody, how are you going to deliver value to them? What does it mean to be who you are? I can tell you that that question will take you your life to work out, potentially. And I haven't worked out who I am. You can see by the number of jobs that I've had. I haven't quite nailed that yet. But the value that I deliver and who I am as an individual and the way in which I interact with people will convey a sense of who I am. And when I work for Cancer Council, I wear a badge. I carry business cards in my pocket, and at every opportunity I speak to people about the value of the work that we do as an organisation. And in turn, people reciprocate and they want to be involved and they want to make a difference. Because if you stand for something, if you're passionate about something, that's infectious. And people want to be involved in things that are infectious. I can't go viral. I can get a virus, but I can't go viral. But I can certainly spread and infect people one-on-one with the value that I do and what I do at Cancer Council. So, be memorable, be memorable, be memorable. And try and communicate with people 3 times. Business card, LinkedIn, email. Business card, phone call, next meeting. Whatever you do, I've just made that up because 3 things are always important. Communicate with people 3 times. It's a new word of wisdom. You can trademark that. Try and work out after you've met with somebody how you're going to be able to touch base with them 3 times. There are some people who will fit into the opposite of being memorable and you will want to forget them. In that case, don't connect with them on LinkedIn, don't send them an email, and don't organise another meeting time. And make sure you're not one of those people. So, the one kind of last thing, I think I've got 5 minutes, haven't I? Lucky timing. The last thing that I think is important is to make a difference. And it's one of the things that I joined Cancer Council because I lost my mother-in-law to leukaemia within 6 weeks, and my father-in-law took his own life associated with that cancer experience. So that's why I work for Cancer Council. It's why I stand for something. And it's an amazing organisation because it makes a difference. And as Tracy said, she feels good being a part of it. That's kind of, in a way, when you do work for charities and you do work for something you're passionate about, you don't need to get anything back because you get back something in your heart that's worth a lot more. And so I'd say to all of you, and certainly this notion of the different generations hang on, let me just make sure I put our logo up there. You think about Y generation, and I've read a lot of books on Y generation, and the defining quality of Y generation, well, there's a couple. Apparently you have a very effective bullshit meter. So, you know when people aren't telling the truth. And I think that's really important today, that you remain strong about not accepting any rubbish from anybody, and that you do stand for something. You actually want to make a difference. And I think that's really important, and I think that's a great opportunity for all of you to actually stand up and deliver value. You have a great opportunity at the moment to be able to invest in yourselves through a number of different mechanisms. You're all here in the Global Experience Program, so that means that you're actually all one step ahead of a lot of people who are thinking about trying to do the easiest path sounds like you're here to do the right thing. And you have an opportunity to volunteer at the moment through a number of different programs, and it's great to see other people running fundraising events, and I'd encourage you to get behind that for whatever you're doing. And I'd encourage you to get involved with Cancer Council. And I say that not because I'm here to try and sell Cancer Council, but because I think you can get great value out of it. You can get great value out of it because we can reciprocate, as we've demonstrated with different people who've been involved. I think you can feel good in your heart about making a difference, and it's good for your careers as well, because you're going to leave here eventually. Some of you longer than others. I took a long time from university with a piece of paper, and that's it. And I see those resumes all the time, and they're pretty short. And under the section that says other work experience, they're pretty thin. And you're all going to need to be able to get out there and communicate something to potential employers. And you know, it's going to be tough, particularly if it's tough for jobs. But there's no doubt in my mind that it's the people who come to the party before the herd is there that you will connect with. You know, there's a notion of fish where the fish are that's great, except if you're one of those fish. You know, when we advertise jobs, we get hundreds of applicants. But when people come to us and they deliver value and we get to know them, there's only one applicant. And that's the value of networking. And that's the value of doing something that's different. So that's it from me. I wish you all very well. And I can offer a host of ways of you delivering value. Matt and I are here for the next hour. And we're really happy to chat to you about ways in which we can help you achieve what you need to achieve in terms of your volunteering hours. But I think more importantly than that, we can help you to deliver the value that you need, larger than just to meet your volunteering requirements.
Can I thank you first of all? Let's thank. Does anybody have any questions for Troy? I have one and happy to start the ball rolling while you think. My first question was actually, I wrote it down while we saw that amazing list of jobs. An amazing list of jobs.
If you're going to ask me about the Pink Palace in Corfu, I can't tell too much about that, I'm afraid.
I do. There's so many things I want to find out about Troy now. But I was thinking, you know, Troy has such an eclectic background, and I'll be honest, my background is very similar. You know, for the first 10 years or so of my career, I was just doing all sorts of bits and pieces. But the challenge is, and here's my question for you, you had that incredibly eclectic background. There was sport, there was bar work, there was all sorts of, there was freeloading at the zoo, I noticed. When you applied for this more senior position as fundraising manager at the Cancer Council SA, how did you bring it all together and show that you had the skills for that job?
I think, you know, in terms of career progression, I don't know where I want to go. You know, I know what I want to do. You know, I want to be able to deliver value. I want to be able to do something that's different, to make people think, to change people's minds, their perceptions, to do things that people don't think is possible. But I don't know the position description that is. You know, I'm not too fussed by position descriptions and job titles. So, you know, clearly the way that I got the job at Cancer Council was because prior to that I was the regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company, and prior to that a marketing manager for an alpine resort and a marketing manager for a theatre company. So that's how I got that job. I think when you present your resume, it doesn't look like that. You know, and that's why, you know, if you're picking a job that you want to apply for, you pick the relevant bits. You know, nobody needed to see that I was a station hand on a Western Australian sheep station. in order to get a job as a business development manager at Cancer Council. So that stuff didn't even exist. But it's that stuff, it's all the stuff that you do that you can bring into a job once you get it. And that's why, you know, for people that know me and for people who I have an opportunity to interact with, they can get to know me from a level that the sheep and cattle station thing actually is relevant to the general manager business development role. But on a resume, you go, what the hell have they got that on there for? That's ridiculous. Yeah. Why would you put that on there?
Now that's a good segue, and I'm sure most of you met Lynn Salby? Lynn? I think Lynn's been in some of your classes, if not all of them. Lynn's our career services advisor, and Lynn will give you that exact same advice. I've seen on some students' resumes what you did in primary school. You know, I was captain of my primary school. Well, that's very relevant, and it will come in later. It's not something you put on the resume. So it's about picking and choosing the skills and qualities, not lying, not being deceptive, but picking and choosing what's relevant to that particular job. And what I was hoping Troy was going to say was that also thinking about not necessarily what the job was that you did, but what the skills were and the strengths and the way you've developed as a person that came from that eclectic background.
What I can tell you, I did have on my resume thanks for reminding me, was I had my strengths. I'd actually undertaken strengths finders as part of an organisational activity many years ago. And so I listed my 5 key strengths on my resume in accordance with that. So, you know, it was a way for me to tie in some of the eclectic mix of jobs and put that into a framework that said, this eclectic mix of jobs, and some of those were more or less relevant to the current role. They have some core elements to them that are really valuable. So, you know, playing to your strengths and capitalising on your strengths, and if you're communicating to people what your strengths are, then they, like my meeting with Matt, identified that he had the strengths that I needed. I didn't know what I needed in terms of the position description and a job title, but I needed the strengths that Matt had.
So please join me in thanking Troy Farr.